Hello, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're joining us from. We are happy to have you here. On behalf of DEEN Support Services, welcome to our special program that we have for the International Day for Persons with Disabilities, which we will be celebrating on December 3rd. So my name is Rafia Hanif Cleofas, and I will be your moderator today. I'll say a little bit, give you a little bit background about myself. I am I keep forgetting this title that I have. I'm the Community Relations Manager at DEEN Support Services. And my experience in terms of the disability community goes back for a very long time. 25 years of experience within the disability community. I've been instrumental in starting up a number of community organizations relating to disability. Organizations like OITCO, the Ethno-Racial People with Disabilities Coalition of Ontario, Canadian Association of Muslims with Disabilities, Race and Disability Canada, and Muslims with Disability International. So Alhamdulillah, I have a lot of experience within the disability community, and I'm honored. I'm absolutely honored to have an amazing panel with us here today. One of our panel members, Noma, was not able to make it today because of an emergency situation that she had, but it's all good. So I want to welcome everyone. And I would like to introduce you to our panelists that we have today. First, we have is Gufran Alias, and Gufran is a graduate research assistant at OISE, University of Toronto. She has a master's in social justice education. She is a master's in social justice education student.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry. And our second panelist is Ben Akuwako, and he is with the CNIB, the GTA program lead, and he has a master's in what is wrong with me today? He is a student for the master's in social work program. So welcome everyone. We are excited to have you here with us today. And basically what we will be having is a conversation around leadership. And I just want to put it in context, and I'll give you both a chance to talk a little bit more about yourself. We'll talk about challenges, we'll talk about accomplishments, we'll talk about where do we need to go, things like that. So in terms of the context, in terms of leadership, one of the things that I've noticed in my work within the disability community is that there's a huge gap when it comes to leadership. And I wish that there would be more leaders, emerging leaders, the youth that are coming up, taking on this role, because it's so important. Because when the older ones like me, move on or passed on, that gap is going to be there. And we need leaders to, continue the work and continue all the achievements that we've made in the community to carry on. And that's why I'm so happy to have two emerging leaders within the disability community to join us here today. And I'll welcome Gufran and Ben. So Gufran, let's start with you. Can you talk a little bit more about yourself? I want you to introduce yourself in terms of, where you were born, your journey, type of disability, so people get a sense of who you are.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I was born in Iraq, in the capital of Baghdad, and I immigrated to Canada in 2007. And a little bit of context into my disability: I was born with spina bifida, which is a spinal cord injury, and I am in a wheelchair. My journey from where I was born to here, I had to have multiple surgeries in order to correct my spine and so on and so forth. And then immigrated to Canada from the US. And after that, this is where, in Canada was where my journey really began, in terms of beginning life and starting at my education. At 11 years old was when I started school, and was formally educated. And then after that, I finished elementary, or middle school, high school in the so-called normal time, and or within the expected time range, and then went on to finish my education at George Brown College, which I started out in a preparatory program in the pre-community services, in the Center for Work and College Preparation, to get my certificate in preparatory and liberal studies. From there, I went forward to get my diploma in community worker, which was also at George Brown. And then from there, I went to Ryerson, formerly known as Ryerson, currently known as X University, where I got my BA in Critical Disability Studies, which I now help hold. And now I'm at OISE, in the beginning of my journey in the Master's in Social Justice Education. And I'm also a research and graduate assistant, currently serving for the next 2 semesters.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing.
That
And
is my journey in a
yeah,
nutshell.
well, what I do admire is how you just move up that ladder. Can you talk a little bit about the early days of your education? What happened there? Where?
Early stages of my education, if I were to describe that in one word, it would probably have to be, okay, I lied. I cannot describe it in one word. I would I still do call myself a hungry learner. I was eager. I was hungry to learn. Despite the challenges that I had in front of me, the barriers that I think today, as an adult, as a grown woman, or a growing woman, I think I've opened up my eyes to it even more, both because I've been educated and also I have come to open my eyes to what those barriers are and put a name to them, where in the earlier stages of my life, I was like, what are challenges? What are barriers? I can just punch a wall and get through it and move on with my life.
Okay.
That is what you call a perfect world, but that's not one we live in, unfortunately. But I think as I grow in the earlier stages of my life, I have come to know that the brick walls that are there are not there to keep us out. They're there to see how badly we want things. And I hope, and I know that other people would say that I have wanted things badly. And I have put forth a goal, and I've focused on it and given it all I've got, as a child and still as a grown human being, and that is my education, because I believe that education is what grounds us.
Sorry, I mean to interrupt, but just for me to understand, so the beginning of your education, were you educated at home?
I was homeschooled.
Okay.
By my mom, and again, and just a little bit more context about me. My first language is Arabic. So my formal education was in Arabic, and I was learning simple things, not to the standards of society, whatever those were back then and whatever on earth standards meant. And I know I'm using the fancy word now, but it wasn't enough.
Okay.
I was satisfied. I was a happy camper. I didn't complain, and just went about my day. But
Okay, we'll come back. We'll come back to some of the issues more in depth. I just want to get Ben
yeah,
on.
so I was homeschooled
Yeah.
by my mother, who was my yes.
So you were homeschooled up to the age when at 11 to get into
yes.
it?
So I started. I started school at the age of 11, but I moved out of my homeland at the age of 9.5.
Okay.
And basically between surgeries and everything, that's what my life consisted of in those early stages. But then I kind of returned on the pathway to getting an education at 11.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll come back to more of that later. Ben, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to where you are right now?
Of course, of course. So as Rafael has mentioned, my name is actually Bernard, but everybody calls me Ben. And it has been quite a journey. I find I'm an individual who lives with partial sight. I was born with an eye condition called retinitis pigmentosa, and I was actually diagnosed this eye condition at 2 years old. So just eventually to put context into my journey, my parents were actually born in Ghana, West Africa, but I was born here in Canada, but am very close to my culture because it was just assimilated in me through my years of growing up. So going through my journey, it was definitely a journey of adjustment because with my partial vision or partial sight, it actually gradually degenerates. So it's an eye condition where it starts with peripheral vision, it starts with night vision, and then eventually your peripheral vision just keeps getting smaller and smaller, and eventually your central vision is affected. So throughout my life, it was always an adjustment. It was always different stages where I had to adapt to my vision loss or my sight loss. So I remember in elementary school, I gotta admit that I wasn't really the greatest student. I was not focused. I did not have the tools to be successful. I did not know how to adapt to my vision. So I was trying to do things like the other kids. I refused to use technology. I was a high partial, so I had usable vision where I could get by. So I refused to use the tools to make me successful. So when I was younger, it was a lot of conversations about maybe potentially holding my young self back. Maybe this is too much of a course load. Maybe he's not able to do it. But even with that said, I was able to get through elementary school. So then it came high school, where actually in my first year, they thought I wouldn't be able to handle the course load. So they ended up giving me 2 spares in grade 9. And all throughout my high school career, they wanted me to have spares each year. So it makes the course load easier. So thankfully, with support from my parents, I ended up not doing that, where I did take the 2 spares for grade 9, but realized that no, I can do it. I could graduate like the so-called normal time frame. So I ended up doing all the classes. I had no spares in grade 12, and I ended up within 4 years graduating from high school. So then my next part of my journey was going into college, where I ended up doing my SSW and falling in love with the field of social work. At first, I did not want to do it. I felt like I was just kind of put into it, 18 years old, find whatever course you could get into. But eventually, when I started the social work course, I fell in love and I knew this would be the profession for me. So then next up, a part of my journey, I ended up doing university and getting my BSW. And to throw a wrench in it, I went all the way up north to Aurelia, which is near Barrie. So this was my first time, 21 years old, living on my own. And there was a lot of thoughts where, can he even live on his own? Is he well equipped to live on his own? But throughout those 4 years, I ended up graduating from my BSW. And that was another checkbox in my goals. And then from there, I got into the work.
Was that at W. Ross McDonald School?
No, that was actually a mainstream school.
A mainstream school. Okay.
Yes. So I ended up going, when I got my BSW, I ended up ironically working a few jobs. One was working at a call center just to get a survival job. Then I graduated from there and working at the YMCA Employment and Community Center, working with individuals with disabilities, with ODSP to help them navigate the system. And then ironically, as you mentioned, I ended up working at W. Ross McDonald School. And then from there, I ended up I'm now working at the CNIB as program lead of advocacy, accessibility, and community engagement. And then on top of that, I am a part-time student doing my MSW, which was such a huge dream come true, especially coming from the factor that in school, people were like, he can't do it, he can't do this. So I think all in all with my journey, just no matter what it is, if it's education, if it's employment, if it's even personal goals, such as running a half a marathon or getting into boxing or traveling, or even just doing health and fitness and making music, I'm always motivated to smash those goals and to prove that just because I have partial sight, just because I have a disability, it doesn't matter. Bring it on. I'm willing to change what people's perceptions are.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing, because I think that is something that all of us, we have a little bit of that. We always want to prove people wrong, People I remember when I first came to Canada here and I was looking for work, and I was like, my goal was set on getting a government job. Don't ask me why, but that's what I wanted, right? Stability and good pay, right? And people were saying, there's no way you're going to get a government job, And there I ended up working with the government, not only one government, but two, the municipal government and the provincial government. And that's where all my experience has been, actually, with the government. So we always prove them wrong, right? So that's good.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so well, let us talk about. And the reason why I stress so much on the education, because a good education is a stepping stone, and for many people with disabilities, that's where they face a lot of barriers and don't get the opportunity to be educated. So that it's very important that people get an understanding that there are barriers that are there that are preventing people with disabilities from getting a good education, and it's so important. I remember when I was growing up, I grew up in an institution, right? And that is where I first got my my formal education in that setting. And when I left there and I went out into the real world, that people said to my mom, like, no, she can't go to she would not be allowed to go to school because people are gonna push her down and gonna fall down. Like, I'm in a wheelchair, right? So for some reason, people feel that they're gonna push me down, fall down, whatever. But alhamdulillah, I was successful through that process. And that's why it's so key for people with disabilities to have a good foundation in terms of going forward, in terms of their career, their studies, and the work that they want to do in the community. All right, so we're gonna spotlight both of you here. So I'm gonna put the spotlight to bring back Gofran at the front here to both of you together. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what are some of the barriers that you're facing? What are some of the challenges you're facing? And let's talk a little bit too about COVID. The IDPD, the International Day for Persons with Disabilities theme for this year is leadership and participation of persons with disabilities towards an inclusive, accessible, and sustainable post-COVID-19 world. But before we go to the post-COVID-19 world, let's talk about what are some of the issues, what are the things that impacted you the most as a result of the pandemic as a person with a disability.
Who is this question for?
You can start. Go from, yeah, go ahead.
I think what has impacted me the most is, in case you haven't noticed from my personality or from seeing me through this square box, I'm very much a social butterfly. So being in this from one lockdown to the next, to the next, to the next, and not being able to see people, not being able to see friends, and not being able to find, as much as I can, belonging within communities that I identify as a part of, and belonging just in general as a person with a disability, because that in and of itself is a challenge, COVID or not. But COVID just adds that dimension and that extra excitement, for lack of a better word. So that's been the most challenging for me. And as a person who is a lifelong learner, it's been a wild journey, might I say, continuing my education online in a master's degree, because my ultimate experience would be to experience it in the classroom, not only to be able to feel as part of, a classroom community, but also to access the needs that I need to succeed as a student, and as a lifelong learner, to kind of come to that, to level the playing field that everybody else has, that I wouldn't say I don't, but a little bit more challenging for me to have because of our standardized education system.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Ben, what about you? What are the most what was the most challenging thing for you during the pandemic?
Yes, so I'm gonna revisit when the pandemic first happened. So at first, the initial, oh, this may be only 2 weeks or a month, woohoo, getting to work from home, get to I don't know, start on hobbies, on that puzzle that's left in the dust in the corner of my room. But then as the pandemic kept going, I found that, even as said before, I'm a social person. So I found that I didn't have opportunities to go out, interact, even with my family members, because I live on my own. So even that lack of interaction, a person who doesn't drive, having to worry when taking the bus. I know a lot of bus routes were minimalized, and even going to the store with having arrows on the floor and not getting to locate where I am, and just that extra stress of going grocery shopping or shopping as a whole.
Yes.
And at one point, even grocery delivery programs such as Instacart taking so long because there were so many orders. So I remember at that point, it was just a whole whirlwind of stress and different feelings. But as a person living with a disability, we always adapt. As hard as it is, and as much as we get into sometimes not the best place, we always learn to adapt. So even moving forward with the pandemic and like the whole world kind of being virtual, being part of events like this, and be having time to do my schooling, which is all online, and even having time to myself. So I really learned how to adapt to these challenges. Don't get me wrong, they're still there when I go out, and having to carry around a cane, your wallet, your keys, everything, and then having to carry around having a mask on your face and hand sanitizer. It is a little bit inconvenient, but at the same time, yes, that was my experience when it came to the pandemic.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah, yep. It's interesting. The different kinds of disabilities have different kinds of challenges, right? And for me, as a person with a disability who depend on personal support worker, you know, it was a massive shortage of PSWs, right? And because of that, it limits, you know, the time you get. You know, some there are times when they don't show up, and because of whatever reasons, a lot of them did not want to work. You know, I lost 2 attendants during that time, and it created a lot of you know, stress for me because you know, I depend on them to help me get my things done because we all have a life, you know. But you know, one of the amazing things about people with disabilities is that we are always problem solving, always, no matter what the situation is, we're always. And I think that is key to making us good leaders, right? Absolutely, absolutely, yes. I just want to take a pause and just remind our audience, if you have any questions, feel free to put it into the Q&A section. So once we, you know, finish this, we can get some questions from the floor. All right, coming back now to the leadership. Can you talk about a time when you had to show this leadership quality? Um, you know, is something in the past, maybe where you had to bring people together, whether it's advocacy, whether it's for yourself. Can you talk a little bit about an incident like that? Ben, do you want to start?
Yeah, of course, of course. So even a point of leadership, I find that with myself, because my intersectionality,
Yes.
I have the intersectionality of being a Black male, having partial sight, the field I am in, being a social worker as a male. It's sometimes where I'm that person who has to break ground, right? I'm that person who has to be that first, whether it was even graduating from Laurentian in the BSW in earlier, or even going up to W. Ross as a student support counselor, and even in the role I am as well, being like a Black male. So leadership, I find, is to create that standard of how a certain population is portrayed, and to be able to educate others on the type of individuals and the type of people or the type of impacts that you're trying to make. So definitely, I feel like I do have to take that leadership role almost every day when there are people who don't know about sight loss or who don't know about disabilities. So even to self-advocate and even to advocate on the behalf of other individuals. So that's a challenge that I welcome. I welcome when it comes to disability, when it comes to race. I welcome that opportunity to provide education and be the first to provide those.
Wow, thanks. What about you, girlfriend?
For me, I think one pivotal point, I would say, in my leadership as a person with a disability, or my leadership to advocate for individuals with disabilities like myself and other diverse disabilities, started in the beginning of the pandemic, when I attended a town hall so that was an initiative part of the program I graduated from, the BA in Critical Disability Studies at Ryerson. And a lot of issues were discussed in terms of students feeling isolated, students not feeling like they are part of a program, part of a community, part of a student body, because they are in an online program to begin with, but since the pandemic started, it even got worse. So I decided, well, this was something that I did in my first year, but I think I stepped up and got stronger in it during COVID, and I started to tutor the students, because accessing resources, accessing tutoring supports, succeeding in your education became a challenge, and I felt it. And there's no better way to resonate than having to live that experience yourself. And I was going through it as they speak. So I started to tutor students online over Zoom, making it as accessible as I can with the limited functions of that Zoom and the digital world provide us with. And then I also started a WhatsApp group that still continues to grow, where I just invite students that are part of the program to join in this, to ask questions about classes, advice about how many classes should I be taking per semester as I enter the program. I have so-and-so assignment, who else has it? And address questions like this, but more importantly, make friends, feel like you're a part of something, feel like you're a part of a community. And that's to break isolation overall for individuals with disabilities, but also as academics, studying and being an academic can feel lonely, but it doesn't have to be that way. And that is something that I came to learn and became a true believer in. And that's how it started. And now we have, like, as I said, it continues to grow. It's like more students than my fingers could count.
Wow.
That's a childish response, but yeah.
It is what it is, right? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, that's one of my recent, I guess.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, one of the things, that keeps coming up a lot is how the isolation that people with disabilities face during the pandemic, and it is huge. And then again, for those who have mental health issues, it's another layer of issues or barrier that they're facing, to cope with the pandemic. Now, I know the pandemic had a lot of, issues, but what are some of the opportunities that the pandemic give us?
Oh, okay. So I guess I think I've already mentioned one of my opportunities that it created was to kind of reach out to people, and you don't have to necessarily go step out of your door to make change. Change is at the touch of your fingertips. And I'm not too proud and shabby to say this, because it's still very much a work in progress and it's kind of going downhill right now. But a work in progress is a start. I've started a business providing services for individuals with disabilities of all types of disabilities and diverse types, entitled Beyond Abilities. And that stemmed from really seeing the need for this particular community to, again, engage. And I saw the need to fill the gaps, because I myself, and still to this day, cannot get vaccinated due to health needs. And I often find myself making the choice of putting my health in jeopardy and going out to do the things I want, or taking care of my health physically, but my mental health goes whoop, down the hill.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have to find a happy medium. Where can two things be accomplished all at once? So that's how I started a virtual business to provide virtual services for youth and adults with disabilities to kind of find things that they're interested in.
That is absolutely amazing. I am a strong believer in people with disabilities becoming entrepreneurs. I think given the right opportunities, people with disabilities are going to do amazing with that.
It was definitely a leap of faith. I'm not going to say that I know everything there is to know about it. So I'm working on it though.
Yes, indeed. Of course, it's all about trials and errors, and the more we fail, the more we learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what about you, Ben? What are some of the opportunities the pandemic brings?
Yeah, so I mentioned I was veering into it in the last question with the pandemic. It has opened up a whole new world. In the last few years, the amount of involvement I have found within even the community and all my different kind of communities, and even if it wasn't for the pandemic, I don't even think I would have been exposed to the DEEN Vision Supports Group. So shout outs to DEEN Vision, and it just brought some great things to meet some great people and great opportunities, especially for a person, as I mentioned, who doesn't drive. And even an event like this, it would have been in person and thinking, how am I going to get there? How am I getting back? How taking a day to go from Brantford to Toronto, how exhausting is that? So it gives an opportunity for someone like me in the population like me to actually be a part and take part in my community and in society. And I it just blows my mind within the last year how involved, how effective, how much stuff I'm doing online and virtual, and how every day before even going to work, it was you had to be there in person. You had to hop on a bus, you had to hop on a train. But now doing meetings, you could just hop onto a Zoom and get that same information instead of kind of going around. So it is definitely a life changer, and it definitely does benefit us with disabilities as well. And hey, I'm even motivated now that I'm hearing about studying Gatran starting her own business. It almost makes me want to maybe delve into that as well, right? So yeah, it's just a great opportunity, and it provides people living with disabilities to kind of have that leg up for sure.
Yes, I'll tell you something. The online business industry has grown by billions, or trillions to be, exact. So that there's a lot of opportunities for people with disabilities when it comes to that. That is amazing. What is interesting about all of this is that before COVID, you had to beg your employer, "Can I work at home?" Remember those days? I work at home, and it's like they made it such a hassle. Oh no, you can't. Da, 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 da. Right, but now it's
alternative arrangements for people with disabilities or accommodations, where now everybody works at home because you have
exactly. And as people with disabilities, you see, you can make that accommodation so easily. And it's just the mindset, it's just how people think about the problems that sometimes is the barrier, as we could say, sometimes the attitude is the biggest barriers for people with disabilities. Now, as we are talking about leaders, that we want to grow and develop more leaders, what do you think are some of the things that we need to do as a community, the disability community, to ensure that we put out more leaders there? What are some of the things, strategies that we need to take into consideration? Go, Fran.
Okay. I think, and one of the things that has helped me to develop as a leader is you only need one person who cares, right? So find an issue, find something that you feel deeply passionate and care about, that helps you to enact change within your community, because passion leads to leadership and leads you to act towards becoming the leader that you aspire to become. So yeah, all it takes is passion. It sounds easy, but it's not. But yeah, that would be my take on it.
Yeah, as Les Brown would say, you have to be hungry for it, hungry.
Yeah.
Ben, what about you? What are some of the strategies we need to put in place to ensure that we develop more leaders?
Of course, and I'm so excited that you just quoted Les Brown. that just made my whole entire day for sure. I love Les Brown. So
I'm a personal development junkie, so you too there, don't you?
Yeah, so pretty much to develop leadership, especially in the disability community, I feel that it's very important for all of us in the disability community to support each other, right? In all of our different endeavors. So instead of competing or instead of separating each other by disability or even maybe by other intersectionalities, be there to support each other and provide these resources and supports. So if I know someone, for example, Bertrand, doing her business, and I see something maybe for a grant, passing it over to her, or if I know someone's into music and they want to be established in the musical field, maybe helping them out and passing that knowledge, or passing any resources that you come across. So I feel that you're most successful when you stand on the shoulders of giants. And by building all of us up, we could even just climb from one shoulder to one shoulder. And it's just so key as a community just to support each other and understand each other's disabilities, and just support each other as a whole.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes. And one of the things from my experience also in terms of developing leaders, and this is something that I feel strongly about, and I'm very, very passionate about it, because I think it is so crucial. In the disability community is really lacking, leaders, to take over, and we need to develop them. So some of the ideas that I could think of is like having mentorship program, personal development, leadership development, giving people with disabilities an opportunity to speak, like what we have right here, and it's not always the ones who are the leaders are always speaking, it's not always me speaking, introduce and give opportunities to emerging leaders. And I think that's how they would get a chance to develop their skills, develop exposure, develop networking and getting more contacts. It is so important, and it's so important that we support each other in all of this. Yeah.
And I think that's what defines true leadership, is to be able to pull the next person in line forward to join you in the same lane, as a person with a disability themselves. And I think one of the, I guess, themes that I'm seeing, or things that I've heard you say as well, is that the importance of mentorship is something that we need, because this sounds cliche, but it's not. But there's a leader in everybody.
Yes.
Somewhere, sometime, someday, you'll find it. And another thing I would probably add is, and this is more moving on to the lesson that I've learned as a person with a disability, is that if opportunity doesn't knock, then build a door. And I think that's what I feel I've done throughout the pandemic, and starting the business and starting the WhatsApp group to support my fellow students and whatnot. Because you're not just gonna do this and sit there and wait for stars to come and shine down on you.
Yeah.
You have to create those opportunities for
I
yourself.
love that. I absolutely love that. And that is exactly what we really need to do. I'll tell you what happened. At the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, I just went back to this situation. It was International Women's Day, right?
Mhm.
And nobody was asking anyone with a disability to speak. You have all these amazing women speaking, right? But
Mhm.
none of them were people with disabilities, women with disabilities. I'm like, what? No way. Then Race and Disability Canada decided to put on a forum to have the voices of racialized people with disabilities speak, and it was an amazing session, and that is what is missing, within the community. So even let's talk a little bit about this, this intersectionality, because here we are as people with disabilities, and we feel that we are, excluded sometimes from our own disability community, or we excluded against from the women's movement, or we excluded from our racialized community, right? And that's where we need to ensure that our voices are being heard. And and as you say, we take the initiative on. We take that initiative on, and we make it happen. If they don't give us an opportunity, okay, good, we do it, right? So I really like that, Gufran. That was amazing. That was amazing.
So yeah, and that's just to say that we're willing to be invited. Invite us at the table, but but sometimes even if you're not invited to the table, you have to show up. That sounds
yes
fully terrifying.
As I always say today, and give me a seat, I'll bring my chair.
Yeah, you can save that extra seat for somebody else, or put it in the storage room.
Exactly.
I already have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything you want to add, Ben?
I was just gonna piggyback what you're saying. I think representation is so important, especially for the young people who do live with disabilities, because it was a certain point where you weren't supposed to step on that ground, right? But I feel like when you observe someone else with a similar situation breaking that ground, it does incite this passion in you, this passion that you want to do it too, right? That you do belong. So it's so important to have that representation for sure.
Yes, and also for the younger ones to see the role models are there. They have someone who look like them. They have someone who they can look up to and say, okay, Ben did it, so I can do this. Gufran did it, I can do this, So that
did it, so I can do this.
That's amazing, So they see that. When we see that, you have that confidence in yourself that, we can make that happen. All right, so we need to wrap up a little bit. So I just want to ask this question. What advice do you have for our youths coming up who want to take on this leadership role? What advice do you have for them? Ben, do you want to start?
Of course, I would say for any youths coming up, this is the right time, especially when it comes to technology, especially when it comes to equity and equality. This is such a good time to spread your wings and fulfill your potential. So something that I like to say is, when life gives you lemons, you make a whole menu. So it's not just lemon. It's not not just lemonade, you make a whole menu. You use as much as that lemon as you can. So just take advantage of whatever opportunity comes your way. Any supports that you have, make a community, and just use that disability as a positive and not a negative.
Absolutely, absolutely. Gufran, what advice do you have?
I think I mentioned the piece of advice that I have earlier on, or just a few minutes ago, but I will reiterate because it is important. Simply put, if opportunity doesn't knock, then build the door. I would say put yourself out there, show up, say I want it, because you don't need a shiny crown or a shiny name tag or a shiny anything to as a qualifier for you to be a leader, because you define yourself, and by defining yourself you show others how to define you. So yeah, take opportunity that comes in front and make your voice heard.
Absolutely. Thank you. One last question. I keep saying that, but I have to ask this question. Ben, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
I want to leave that legacy where this guy made opportunity, right? I want to leave a legacy where anytime someone thinks about Bernarda Kwaku Devonka, they have a smile on their face. And I always joke around, like, at my funeral, I hope that people are enjoying themselves and laughing, because just the vibe that I left behind. So just keep pushing it. Keep pushing it.
Good. And Gufran, what's your legacy you would like to leave?
Ooh, this is a very tough question. But I would say that I would like to be remembered as the person who empowered others, as a person who believed in others, because I have got to experience firsthand what it is like not to be believed in, and fought against it. So my life mission and goal is to help others like myself fight against it as well.
Absolutely. That's so amazing. That is so amazing. Anyway, we're gonna have to wrap it up here today. I want to say thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation that we have. And I also want the world to know that people with disabilities are here and we are leaders and we can make a difference in society, and partner with us and ensure that we can make, the changes that are needed in society. I want to wish everyone a happy International Day for Persons with Disabilities, a happy IDPD, and go out, enjoy the day, and just, make that move, because you can do it. Thank you so much.
It's all about making the move.
Make that move. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ben. Any last words?
I see. Just go get it.
Go get it. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. We were not able to take any questions because we're out of time. Oh, there was one question. Let me just see.
Yeah.
Okay, it was a very wonderful discussion. I think many of us as people with disabilities have a dream of being a leader in any way, but there is a need to establish the program to build our confidence, especially for people with disabilities who are new in the country. Very good question, Rawaida. Yes, exactly. And I think that one of the things that we need to do as an organization is to set up like leadership programs where we can develop those skills and expertise. Thank you, everyone, once again, and enjoy the day. Enjoy International Day for Persons with Disabilities. Take care and have a good one.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Assalamualaikum, everyone.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.